أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Continuing with the verse number 133 of Surah Al Imran. وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَجَنَّةٍ عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. And hasten towards your Lord's forgiveness and a paradise as vast as the heavens and the earth, prepared for the God-weary. We discussed this verse in our previous session. However, there was a couple of issues that was left for this week. The first one was the expression Jannatin arduha as-samawatu wal-ard. Gardens or paradise, the width of which. Now here the translation says as vast as. But if we want to translate it literally, it is the width of which lies the width and the breadth. So we have the length and we have the width. It talks about the width. Now, some commentators say that it has actually mentioned the smaller side, which is as big as heavens and earth, to allude that its vastness cannot be measured or imagined. However, whether we can actually use such measures about paradise or about universe or things like that is a bit a matter of question. What we can say is that it's not the matter of width or breadth or whatever. It is as vast as something that we cannot imagine, like the vastness of the universe. Especially if you say it is not only the physical heaven that we are talking about. It's the whole physical and metaphysical heaven that the Quran speaks about. And the paradise is as vast as that. There's another opinion here, a beautiful actually opinion from Abu Muslim al-Isfahani, who I've talked about before, the Mu'tazili Mufassir, great Mu'tazili Mufassir. He says Arth here doesn't mean measure or vastness. It means value. Its value is comparable to whatever you know in this world. And of course, more than that. Its value is comparable to the value of the whole heaven and the earth. So do not actually seek worthless things in this world. A little bit here, a little bit there. You are going to a place where its value is as the value of the whole creation, the value of heaven, all heavens and the earth. However, there's a bit of grammatical problem here if we want to use this meaning. Now, the other thing that the commentators have actually discussed in this regard is, okay, if we say that the paradise encompasses the whole heaven and the earth, especially if you are talking about the physical heaven, metaphysical heavens, so where is hell? Now, the question was asked, this is what Majmu' al-Bayan mentions, the question was asked from the Prophet, peace be upon him, and he said, Subhanallah, when there is day, where is night? Now, this may be a very simple answer, but it's very deep. It means that do not think about these things in terms of place. Rather, they may be different dimensions. They may be two sides of one thing. I mean, as they say, for example, some say the heaven is on the earth and on the heaven, and the hell is under the earth. maybe, of course, under is not a very good expression. It means that it is another dimension in which people live. And paradise is another dimension in which people live. Of course, we know that the Quran says about the vastness of paradise and tightness of hell. It is actually measured to the measure of the evil which is created in the world, to crush it, and not more than that. وَإِذَا أُلْقُوا مِنْهَا مَكَانًا ضَيِّقًا دَعَوْا هُنَالِكَ ثُبُورًا. When they are thrown into a very tight place in hell, of course they call for destruction, for their own destruction. Or, for example, يَوْمَ نَقُولُ لِجَهَنَّمَ هَلْ امْتَلَأْتِ فَتَقُولُ هَلْ مِن مَزِيدٍ. When we say to the hell, have you already filled? Is it full now? And لَأَمْلَأَنَّ جَهَنَّمَ مِنَ الْجَنَّةِ وَالنَّاسِ أَجْمَعِينَ. All these, filling the hell, putting them in a tight place, means that hell is something which is just for somehow recycling, while paradise is as vast as the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The last sentence of this verse, أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, prepared for the God-weary. Now, the God-weary, of course, are those who are obedient to God, obedient to the messenger. They try to avoid the sins. They try to perform whatever command they receive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the obedient. And it is by this obedience, is by this taqwa, that they actually attain and achieve paradise. Of course, with the caveat that I mentioned last session, that it should be, of course, matched with rahmatullah. Without rahmatullah, no one will enter. However, there's one question, and that is, what about children? Children are not muttaqeen. Actually, they aren't mukallafeen at all, so that they are they are said that the paradise is prepared for them. What about people who have mental handicap and they are not mukallafun? They are not addressee of the command and prohibition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And certainly they would go to paradise according to what the Shia theology says, and Muslim theology, and maybe all theologies say that. Also, there are some people who are fusaq, who are not muttaqeen, but God may forgive them and they may go to paradise. So this term, u'iddat lil muttaqeen, prepared for the God-weary, should mean that although others may enter, although the children would enter, although many people who are not muttaqi in that restricted sense, but they are included in the mercy of Allah and enter, however, this place is prepared for muttaqi. It is something which has sort of relation and closeness to taqwa. It's by taqwa that this is created. And of course, others may also have the pleasure of using it, have the pleasure of entering it. And also, another thing which is mentioned here is that, there's this dispute whether heaven and hell are already created or they will be created on the day of judgment. Now, based on this verse, some commentators say that it is already prepared. It says, "U'iddat lil muttaqin," it's prepared. Well, grammatically, linguistically, we can actually deduce such a thing from this expression, because we may say that it is going to be prepared for muttaqin. But according to many narrations, yes, hell and paradise are created, although no one has yet entered them. we haven't actually got close to that realm yet. That realm already exists, but we haven't entered into that realm. What the Prophet saw in terms of paradise and hell in Mi'raj, it was what he was seeing in Barzakh, not in the paradise of Akhirah. Although he actually had a tour of that as well, but it was empty because no one has yet entered that paradise or the hell, because of course that will happen after the judgment, and there has not been a judgment yet, not a judgment day yet for people to enter. So we may say that yes, they are prepared, but no one has entered. And as the Quran says, وَأُزْلِفَتِ الْجَنَّةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, the paradise will be brought close to muttaqeen. That means it's a higher realm. It's a realm beyond even the realm of the resurrection day. And it should be brought close for muttaqeen so that they could enter that. And also about the hell, it says, وَسُؤِّرَتِ الْجَحِيمِ لِلْغَاوِينَ. The hell will be ignited. So that means it is there, but it's not ignited yet. وَإِذَا الْجَحِيمُ سُؤِّرَتْ, when the hell is ignited. And therefore, we may say, yes, of course, I mean, أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ in this verse may mean that it's already prepared, but prepared not in the sense that anyone can now enter. The entrance to hell and heaven only happens after the judgment is complete, after people have received their books of action, after they have passed over the Sirat, after the Shafa'ah is done, and all these things, then it's decided who should go to hell and who should go to paradise. So, what the verse said, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَجَنَّةٍ أَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ وَإِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Hasten towards your Lord's forgiveness. And we talk, of course, what is the Lord's forgiveness. And the paradise as vast as the heavens and the earth, prepared for the God-weary. Now, the following couple of verses actually give a beautiful description who the muttaqeen are. A practical description of muttaqeen, not an abstract description. Who are the muttaqeen that we are talking about? That the paradise are prepared for them. And others who may not have these descriptions, these qualities, may enter paradise, but this is prepared for this caliber of people. Verse 134, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Three magnificent qualities are mentioned here. And maybe four, I will mention that later on. But let's set on three now. Three very beautiful and magnificent qualities are mentioned here. First is that those who spend in ease and adversity. The first one. الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ, and suppress their anger. والعافين عن الناس, and excuse the faults of the people. والله يحب المحسنين, and Allah loves the virtues. Now some say Allah loves the virtues or muhsinin. Ihsan here is a fourth quality which is mentioned. And some say that no, those three qualities, spending in ease and adversity, suppressing anger, excusing people of their faults, are instances of high ihsan. This is ihsan. This is to be virtuous, to have virtue. Now, فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ. Sarra means, of course, ease, and Dharra means adversity. Some have said, because of course, when people are in adversity, are poor, in poverty, they are not expected to give. However, some say that this has become part of them. It doesn't matter whether they give little or a lot. I mean, a very wealthy person may be quite miserly. That is part of their sort of psyche, has become part of their psyche. But even a muttaqi who has this quality, even if they are poor, they share whatever they have. Even if they have just one bit of, one piece of date, they may share it with someone else, make it half. As we have in hadith, which says that give sadaqah even if it is half of a date or part of a date. But some others have said here that here sarra and zarra may not mean ease and adversity in terms of wealth or poverty. It means whether they are happy or sad, whether they are in difficulties of life or they are in comfort of life. They do not forget others. I mean, a rich person may be a very generous person, but when they come into difficulty, into adversity, they may forget about others. But these people would not. So there are two different ways of expressing it. Sarra wa dharra means when in happiness and in sadness. Sarra wa dharra means when they are rich and when they are poor. الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ. Now, about this ينفقون في السراء والضراء, Mughniya says in Tafsir al that, usually what happens, wealth brings avarice for people. It makes them rebellious. And it makes people miserly because of the avarice that they have. And for these people, muttaqin, the wealth doesn't do that to them. Also, poverty makes people sad, makes people secluded. They do not have any desire to help anyone else. That also would not affect the muttaqin. Whether they are, even if they are poor, they do not think that they deserve more than others who are poorer than them to give. And then he mentions this hadith, tasaddaqu walau bishaqq tamratin. Give sadaqah, even if it's part of a date, piece of date. Do that to show that quality. It's not important how much you give. It's important that that quality of generosity manifests itself in you. So, الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ, and those who suppress their anger. And of course, this is very difficult. I mean, to be generous may be easier than suppressing one's anger when one becomes angry. Well, kadhim is to tie the opening, the aperture of a water skin or whatever, tied so that things don't come out of it. And therefore, it means someone who is full of anger, full of sorrow, full of bad feelings, would somehow tie the soul in a way that it doesn't pour out. This is kadhimul ghayz, wal kadhimin al ghayz. And then Mughniya says, if you want to see the strength of the faith of a person, it's not just by doing a'mal. These are good, but these are the instances that you can measure the strength of faith. Nothing, he says that nothing more than suppressing anger would show the strength of the faith, that one possesses oneself and can actually somehow swallow the anger. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ. The second quality of muttaqin. Then he reports a hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam, an advice to his son Imam Hassan alayhi salam. تجرأ الغيظ فإني لم أرى جرأة أحلى منها عاقبة ولا ألذ مغبة. Tajarru means to swallow with difficulty. Swallow your anger. Because I haven't ever seen anything swallowed sweeter in its ending and more pleasant in its outcome than anger. And that's true. You know, when we somehow control ourselves, when we suppress our anger, later on we will see that what would have happened if we had unleashed that. The families are destroyed, the people would become disgraced, and many other things. But by keeping that, of course, one would see the sweet outcome, the pleasant result of it. And that's why the Imam says, I haven't seen anything more pleasant in outcome later on than swallowing one's anger. So, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. And those who forgive people when they do wrong them. وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. Which one is more difficult? To suppress one's anger or to forgive someone who has wronged you? Well, of course, suppressing anger is a momentary thing. I mean, when anger goes, things will become normal. But forgiving and excusing people is something continuous. So that's why, you see, these have come in a sort of graded manner. Although some say Allah mentions generosity first because that is the most important quality of Ahlul Jannah. However, it's a sort of upgrade of faith, level after level. Generosity, controlling one's anger, and then forgiving people. And here Mughniya says, وَالْعَفْوَ عَمَّنْ أَسَاءَ أَفْضَلُ بِكَثِيرٍ مِنْ كَظْمِ الْغَيْظِ. Forgiving people is much, by far higher than just controlling the anger. As I said, because anger is a momentary thing, you can control it and then it finishes. But continuing forgiveness is something which would affect person's inner soul as well, and makes a person hopeful for forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Imam Ali alayhi salam says, إِذَا قَدَرْتَ عَلَىٰ عَدُوِّكَ فَاجْعَلِ الْعَفْوَ عَنْهُ شُكْرًا لِلْقُدْرَةِ عَلَيْهِ. Very beautiful. Very beautiful. When you find power over your enemy, how do you thank God for that? You have an enemy, you are actually competing with each other, and then suddenly God gives you power over your enemy. How do you thank God? By forgiving him. So when you find power over your enemy, make forgiving him a sign of thankfulness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَاجْعَلِ الْعَفْوَ عَنْهُ شُكْرًا لِلْقُدْرَةِ عَلَيْهِ. Okay, as I said, then it says, وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, and God loves the virtues. And virtue means combination of these qualities. Of course, it comes later on, as there are other qualities which follow in the next verse. But these three are enough to make a society like paradise, isn't it? الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء giving in ease and difficulty, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ, swallowing one's anger, suppressing one's anger, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. This is the full ihsan that someone can have. In Majmu' al-Bayan, it says that, as I said, there are two possibilities. One, that whoever has these three qualities is a muhsin, or that ihsan is a fourth thing, and that is to do good to people, is ihsan. No matter who is related to you, how is related to you, you have to be good to them. And this ihsan is the fourth quality. Now, he then says that, different commentators have approached these verses in different ways, and in a very beautiful way. He says that the first thing that Allah has actually praised from the qualities of Ahlul Jannah. These are qualities of Ahlul Jannah, isn't it? Because it says, "Sa'ru ila maghfiratin min rabbikum," rush towards forgiveness of your Lord and a paradise which is as vast as the heaven and earth, prepared for these people. So these are actually people of paradise. And these are the qualities of the people of paradise. So he says that the first thing that Allah has mentioned as a quality of people of paradise is generosity. And then he says, and we have many narrations in this regard from the Prophet, from Imam alayhi salam. And Imam Ali alayhi salam said, "Al-Jannatu darul askhya." Paradise is the abode of the generous. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "As-sakha shajaratun fil jannah." Generosity is a tree in paradise. So these qualities are what makes the paradise actually. أغصانها في الدنيا. Its branches are falling in this world. Whoever just take one of these branches, take hold of one of these branches. We have very, very different avenues of generosity. It will take them to paradise. And of course, these narrations are very deep, telling us paradise is made of these qualities. And also, there's one other hadith that I mentioned here. As-sakhi qareebun min Allah, qareebun min al-jannah, qareebun min al-nas, ba'idun min al-nar, wal-bakhilu ba'idun min al-jannah, ba'idun min al-nas, qareebun min al-nar. The generous is close to Allah, close to paradise, close to people, far away from fire. Wal-bakhil, the miserly, is far from paradise, far from people, and far from and close to fire. Qareebun min Allah, qareebun min al-jannah, qareebun min al-nas, ba'idun min al-nar. This is the generous. And wal-bakhilu ba'idun min al-jannah, far away from paradise, far away from people, close to fire of the hell. Now, there are other things he says about suppressing the anger and also the forgiveness, excusing people. And inshallah, because these are very, very beautiful narrations, inshallah, I will mention that in my next session. And then we continue with other verses, inshallah. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. We're just waiting for Shaykh to join us. So if we give him a few minutes, inshallah, he'll be with us.
Salam Ahmad, how are you?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah.
How are you, Shaykh? Everything okay?
Alhamdulillah, very good.
Good. We have some time for questions. If anyone has any questions, please either post them on the chat in YouTube, or please just raise your hand and ask them yourself over here. Let's begin. Do we have any questions? Yeah, Murtaza uncle, if you want to start us off.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Bahmanpour.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah. Sabahkumullah wal khair.
Ahsan. You said about the description of Jannah and Jahannam, that where is Jannah, where is Jahannam? I think there is a verse in the Holy Quran, في جنات يتساءلون عن المجرمين ما سلككم في سقر. And then قالوا لم نكن من المصلين لم نكن من المصلين ولم نكن نطعم المسكين. Now, does that, I mean, the people of Jannah will be able actually to see those who are in Jahannam, and they will ask them, what has driven you to? So how do we explain that, you see? What has driven you to?
That is why I said that these are two dimensions rather than two different places. Because apart from the verse that you quoted, in Surah Safat, for example, when that person says, قَالَ قَائِلٌ مِّنْهُمْ إِنِّي كَانَ لِي قَرِينٌ, I had a companion who was telling me that this is ridiculous that you are believing in. And then he says, قَالَ هَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُطَّلِعُونَ, let's have a look. And when they start looking, they see them. They see them in the middle of the head. So probably we are not talking about two different places. As the answer by the Prophet, which was asked, where is, if paradise is encompassing the whole heaven and the earth, where is the hell? He said, when there is day, where is the night? So it's not actually something that we should think about it as two different places, maybe two different realms, two different dimensions of existence. One is, of course, that terrible situation, and the other one, all the pleasures of paradise. So, because if we think of it in terms of place and distance, it would be a bit difficult, although we can also say that distance is not a matter of communication in the hereafter. People can communicate with each other from long distances. And even visualizing each other would not be a problem. And whenever the people of paradise want to see the people of hell and communicate with them, they can do it very easily, while it's in another place. But we may say, because of the verses which says that paradise is encompassing everything, we may say that, well, hell is a lower dimension of that.
And also, if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember which verse it is, that they will love to have the nur of the people of paradise, the people of Jahannam. They will be on the other side, isn't it? There is
yes, it's Surah Al A'raf. Yes, that's and also they call them and afidu alayna min al-ma, give us some of the water that you have, and whatever.
That's right. And there is another question, if I may ask. The description of muttaqeen is given variously in various places in the Holy Quran, and even Imam Ali alayhi salam in Nahjul Balagha. But we hear the one description only that is given, that a muttaqi is somebody who is God-wary, who is God-conscious. Now, like this, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ جَنَّةٌ, and then there is Alif Lam Mim ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِّلْمُتَّقِينَ, and gives a description. So which is the actual, who is a muttaqin? I mean, there's so many in the Holy Quran. This one, the one that we have just quoted, which is the one that you would say this, these are really the qualities of muttaqin, or do you just go to each and every description of a muttaqin to be able to know who the muttaqin is? But they given just one who is mindful of the of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Well, we actually, when we are dealing with such descriptions, we should actually deal with different levels and areas. I mean, one area of taqwa is the way we believe in things, truly believe in what is true in the world. And that's what, for example, is mentioned in Surah Baqarah. That's in terms of belief. Then we have in terms of intention, muttaqin are those who are committed, very much committed to God in their intention. Then there is the matter of practice. And these verses are actually describing muttaqin in terms of their practice. That الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس, and it continues in the following verse as well. So one is the level of faith and belief, the other is the level of commitment, and the other is the level of practice. And also in certain verses, certain practices are mentioned as example, and in other verses, other practices are mentioned. So we know that God-wariness is a malaka, is a quality which can guide us in all these three areas of knowledge, of faith, and of practice. And of course, it has different depths. I mean, a person may be muttaqi, but not as deep as someone who always forgives people, for example. So, Ahsant.
Thank you very much. Do we have any further questions? Yeah, Manzoor.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned about quenching the anger is one state, and then we go into this next stage of forgiveness.
Yes.
Now, until and unless we quench the anger, we cannot forgive. And once, if we don't forgive, the anger will keep on coming back and again, because it will be reminding of the situation which created this situation where the anger triggered. So these two are related, and one cannot be complete until we forgive. The anger will not go away. This is one situation, if my understanding is correct, and if you can explain about this more. The other thing is that what are the processes, or what are the steps whereby we can say that, okay, we have forgiven, or the process of forgiveness, how it takes place, if you can explain. No?
When we say we have forgiven or we are forgiven.
No, we have forgiven, because we have to forgive. In this situation, we are asked to forgive to attain that status of muttaqin. So we have to forgive fellow people. So what is the process of it, and how, when we can say that, okay, we have forgiven? We can say that, okay, we have attained that situation of forgiveness, or we have forgiven somebody.
Yeah, well, you are quite right. You know, as long as we are bearing that anger within us, it's very difficult to forgive. I mean, anger is something which is quite wild, untamed, and it would not allow a person to think correctly. It would not allow a person to think about the consequences of their actions. And hence, yes, as long as we are actually keeping that anger within us, it is very difficult to forgive. So the first thing is that وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, those who suppress the anger. And then after that, forgiveness has different levels. Once I forgive, it means that I do not mention it anymore. But in fact, it's in my heart, I have not forgiven yet. Once I have forgiven in the heart, but I always remember that and say that, Ya Allah, you have to do something about it, for example. The absolute forgiveness, which of course we expect from Allah in our regards as well, is that we actually remove all the consequences of what is in our heart regarding that situation. You know, when the wife of the Prophet was accused of doing something wrong in Surah An-Nur, and those who spread the news, of course, those who made the accusation, of course, their situation is different. Allah says they will be punished. But those who spread it, just took it from each other. Well, they said the wife of Prophet has done this, wife of Prophet has done that. Those who spread it, it created lots of anger among Muslimun and among the committed believers. That why are they doing this? Why are they saying such things about Prophet and his wife? And then they actually made a pledge that many of those people were very poor. I mean, those who were just spreading the news were very poor. Some of the rich companions who were well-to-do and were very angry about it, they pledged that we are not going to help these people anymore because they are actually, first of all, annoying the Prophet. They are creating disorder in Muslim society by such an allegation. Then after the whole issue is resolved and Allah reveals the verses in Surah An-Nur, then he says, وَلَا يَعْتَلُ أُولُو الْفَضْلِ مِنْكُمْ وَالسَّعَةِ أَنْ يَأْتُوا أُولِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Those who are well-to-do, they should not stop giving. فَلْيَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَحُوا. They have to forgive and they have to turn away from the incident. That's all. Forget it. Forget this incident. فَلْيَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَحُوا. أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَنْ يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Do you not like that Allah would do forgive you? But here the term maghfirah is used because maghfirah means all the consequences of an action is removed. It means just forget about it. Remove everything. Remove all the grudge. And that is when, of course, the full forgiveness comes, that then we can say, okay, nothing has happened. And sometimes maybe we may think that, well, this may have been the other way around. I may have been the one who was the criminal and needed forgiveness. Things like that, which somehow quenches the anger of the heart.
Thank you very much, Sheikh.
Sheikh, but does not Allah give more verses in the Holy Quran on forgiveness rather than anger, like خُذِ الْعَفْوَ وَأْمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ, and then he said وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ. So Allah in a way gives us a lesson. Look, these are the jahil, just turn away from them. But خُذِ الْعَفْوَ,
yes.
Hold on to forgiveness. Is that not?
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. Forgiveness, because sometimes even we are offended, but we are not angry, and we cannot forgive. So forgiveness is a more comprehensive idea than just forgive when we are angry. This is, of course, this verse is talking about anger, but it's wider than that.
Ahsan.
Sheikh, we have a question on the chat as well.
Yes.
What you have just narrated about the accusation of the Prophet's wife on the spreading of this is no different in the modern day of unsubstantiated info in social media and forwarded the same blindly.
Absolutely. I mean, God helped in those days that there was no social media. Otherwise, the whole event would have become global. Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is the same thing. Just forwarding news that comes to us without establishing it, without substantiating it, is something that creates. I mean, it's just like a lie. I mean, when we spread a rumor which is not substantiated, it's just like lying.
Thank you. Do we have any final questions before we end today's session? Sheikh, I think that then brings us to an end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ahsantum.
Inshallah,
have a good week. Khuda Hafiz.